technologies. There are so many things that can capture our imagination. Just downstairs on the exhibition, all the latest things, all the latest buzzwords, all the latest models. And yet we are here starting this conference on a session called Strategy. And so what I'd like us to do before we introduce the speakers is for you to just introduce yourselves to your neighbours and just outline what it is that you want to take away from a strategy session this morning. Because to be quite honest, most of us who've been to these events before, we know there's a lot of talking going on, but I think I represent the speakers here this morning is that actually what we want to do is to help you take action. So please turn to your neighbours just for the first 2 or 3 minutes and just say, what is it? Why are you at a strategy session this morning? What do you want to get out of this session? So it's over to you to talk to each other. You have permission to talk now. I would have clinked it, but I'm afraid I am not an experienced chair like our Chief of Chairs, Don Taylor. So thank you for turning your attention back into the room. It would be great to actually find out a few things if people are willing to share what it is that they want to get out of this session, because also it means that you're going to be helping our speakers make sure that you get what you really, really want. So just in small tweetable sound bites, who would like to actually share some of the things that you're trying to get out of the session from today? Those of you who don't know me know that I am quite good at picking on people. And I love it when we get a volunteer. Thank you so much.
I think it's moving from the theory into the practice, making it feel real.
So turning the theory into the practice. Everyone's been talking about alignment for a long, long time. So how do we make it happen? Fantastic. Got that, speakers? Next. Okay. Do you want to?
I'll shout if you like. Chat. Okay. Moving from short-term delivery into long-term planning.
So moving from short-term delivery to long-term planning. So going to kind of get the perspective right. Thank you.
One thing I'm really focused on at the moment is moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach to things that are more fit for purpose and targeted.
So having a bigger picture about how do we target and make things more individualised, more personalised as well. Any others who want to make sure that their requirements from today's session are definitely met? Thank you.
That's right, sorry. I was just learning the learning strategy to the business strategy.
Aligning the learning strategy to the business strategy. Absolutely. So what we want to do today is to encourage you as we go through these talks to be able to get out your pen and paper. When you hear something that you might be able to use or do, write it down. I know that everyone will be taking a lot of notes, but have a separate column about the ideas that suddenly occur to you or you hear that you think you can put into practice. We'll revisit those later before we finish the session. So without any further ado, now we've set the scene that we're talking strategy, we're talking action, and we're talking ideas to take it forward. I want to introduce you to Andrew Jacobs. Andrew, many of you will know, has worked this out in practice in a number of different roles in local authorities. And today what he's going to do is to share some of his consolidated thinking, practical tactics to actually help us get to where we need to be. So Andrew, over to you.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. Morning. How are we? Excellent. Just some odd notes. LostandDesperate.com is the name of my blog, where I write about all this stuff. So feel free, put it on your RSS feeds and look at it. Anything on there is free. If you want to email me, you can through there as well. You'll find me on Twitter, @AndrewJacobsLD. LD is not learning disability. It's not learning and development. It's Lost and Desperate. Someone said to me, why is it Lost and Desperate? And I work on the premise that everybody coming to me is either lost, as in they want to learn something but don't know what, or they're desperate. They know what they want to learn, but they don't know how to access it. So that's why it's called Lost and Desperate. No other reason other than that. Okay, what are we going to talk about? Strategy. What is strategy? You're all in here for a session about strategy. What is strategy? A plan? So why do we call it strategy, not a plan? What's strategy? An approach to achieve a goal, to a point, because an approach will only take you so far. What else is strategy? It's
Provides the vision and then space.
Yeah, absolutely. What else is strategy?
A way to know where we want to go to.
to where we want to go to. So it's the approach, it's the direction. It's really interesting because I talk to people about learning strategy, and I don't think we should have learning strategy. I get really frustrated by the term alignment, because as long as you're aligned with your business strategy, you are not integrated and part of your business strategy. And there's dozens and dozens and dozens of business strategies. These are all business strategies in the last 30 years, 40 years. More than welcome. Go and look them up if you want to. Red Queen is a particularly interesting one. But there's dozens and dozens and dozens of these. And you can read all these books, and they'll tell you about how you can translate this into business. But I haven't found a single, efficient, effective learning strategy. And I think the simple reason is because we're trying to do the wrong thing. We're trying to differentiate learning away from the business. We're trying to say that learning is as important as is powerful as the business, but is not part of the business. And that's where we're going wrong. You can have a strategic learning mindset without necessarily having to create a strategic learning or a learning strategy or strategic learning activity. I've been thinking about this for a while. I launched this thinking around it last year. And this is what it looks like now. And effectively, I think the problem is what we do is we try and create a strategy. Our strategy should be the business strategy. That should tell us exactly what we are expected to achieve. So, in a previous role, I was a L&D lead for London Council, and the council's role we wanted to become was a cooperative council, where people could work in the community, citizens in the community, with the organisation in order to get services delivered for that wider community. My argument then was, well, why am I trying to do any learning that's different? If we have a cooperative council, then we should have cooperative learning. So that's my strategy. My strategy is just part, core of what the business needs to achieve. That's done, it's written. Build a cooperative learning strategy. It's that simple. How do you build cooperative learning? This is the most important box. It's the box in the middle. It's actually saying, well, if my aim is to generate cooperative learning, how do I make that happen? There's some work we need to do, which I'll go into in a moment. But we should then move from our tactical thinking and tactics and actions, the things we want to progress, into our commissioning box. In our commissioning box, this is where we should be specifying what is required. Big problem we have in learning and development is over-specification. The vendors out there love it, because we walk out to a vendor and say, this is what I want, this is how much I want of it, this is how much I'm prepared to spend, and we think that we are telling them we are going to get the best result from it. So what do? They say, yeah, we do all of these things, but we do this little bit extra. What we don't do is say, I want to achieve this. And give a nice, wide, open space in terms of commissioning. We over-specify within commissioning. We move through the commissioning phase into our operational activity. So, I was looking at building cooperative learning strategy. My commissioning was all about non-training activities. So what I did is I cancelled all of my training courses. I got rid of all my formal courses, classes and workshops and got rid of everything. And then said, so what does my operational learning then look like? If I'm not doing it in a classroom, what would it then need to look like? I worked out a model as to how that might look, and then went back into my tactics box. In the tactics box, I'm then doing some environmental checks. I'm actually saying, okay, well, will this actually achieve what I want it to achieve? Is it going to meet the strategy? Is it going to create cooperative learning from within the organisation? If I was able to answer those questions, then I can start working my way through delivery. And with delivery phase, again, our vendors outside are all saying how we can change the way we deliver it. Absolutely. We should be thinking about how we deliver it. And it should be a change. It shouldn't necessarily be sitting in a classroom, although that might be appropriate in some ways. And then that creates the transactional data, which then tells us what we've been doing. You go back into the tactical phase, and you can then feed back into strategy. So what we should be doing is living within this triangle. Business creates a strategy. I want to build cooperative learning. Within the tactical space, I then decide how I'm going to approach it. I think about what I need to commission. I then think about how that will be delivered. And then I can feed that data back in to the strategy to demonstrate how people are learning. Simple. But unfortunately, it's not. Because this is what learning and development does. What learning and development does is it takes the business strategy and immediately commissions something. I've got to do stuff. I don't know what it is, but I've got to build something. Let me go and do an e-learning module. Let me go and build a course. Let me come up with some open learning. Let me do something to prove some value without necessarily understanding the impact of what that will mean in the long term. It's a really interesting documentary on Radio 4 yesterday talking about evolution. And it was saying about how accidentally we do things which impact on our organisations. And if we constantly decide, okay, do you know what, I'm going to fish for a certain size fish, then that's going to affect the size of fish in the long run. If all you ever do is commission something, then guess what? People will only come to you to commission. I've talked about it for years. The last 2 years, we should not be shopkeepers, we should be engineers. The role of learning and development is to engineer solutions for a business. It's not to sit there as a shopkeeper just delivering the things they think they want. As long as you do that, you'll just be the happy shopkeeper sitting in the corner. And all the important learning is the stuff they're doing off-site for themselves under some kind of rogue spend under a different budget code. Trust me, it's worth doing. Just go back to your finance department and say, find me anything that's gone through with a spend that's got the name consulting, training or learning within it. And find the spending that's happening outside of your budgets that you're not in control of or that you're not aware of. You don't have to control it, just have an awareness that people are doing it. We then move from our operational phase into transactional activity, and we end up with data, happy sheets. I can count how many people have been on training courses. It's meaningless. It doesn't have anything at all in terms of how the organisation is performing. But what we then do is we feed that back into the strategy and go, look at us. Look how busy we are. Aren't we relevant? Sorry, I apologise. I'm being highly critical of the industry, but it really annoys me. It really, really annoys me, because this is simple stuff. This is what we do because we think it's the right thing to do, because this is the way that people tell us that that's how learning development needs to be. But it's not. And the reason being is because it's the box in the middle that we're doing wrong. And it's nothing more important than A, B, C, D, D, E. That's all we need to do. So can we work out what the mnemonic stands for? What do you think the A stands for? Action? No? Aim. They all come up together. Aim, build, challenges, data, decisions, environment. So, somebody comes along to me and says, I want to build cooperative learning. How can we work and learn in a cooperative manner? First aim that I need to say is, underpinning everything that I do, it must clearly state how it will contribute to that aim. If something I'm doing is not going to contribute to that aim, I shouldn't be doing it. If it's not contributing to the business and the business benefit, I shouldn't be doing it. How do your equality and diversity courses, those face-to-face courses that you run, contribute to your business? Can you prove how they contribute to your business? If you can't, I question why you're doing them. Build. So if you know what your aim is, what are the elements that you need to build in order to achieve this? And things that you build are the things that take you forward towards it. So, for me, it was understanding that the platform that I had, that was where people could share stuff, wasn't good enough. So I had to build a platform. And actually, what I ended up having to do was build a number of platforms. So I built on Yammer, I built on LinkedIn, I built on a Moodle platform, I built on SharePoint, and I found the platforms that would benefit people so they could learn from each other. So I built what people needed. It becomes iterative. Then we come against the challenges. What are the things that are going to stop it? When I took all of my courses and classes away, what do you think my senior manager's response was to it? They didn't. They all went, oh good, you're going to save some money. The challenge I had was, but we've always done courses. The challenge was actually with the other parts of the business to say, you can learn this without having to come to a classroom. So what you need to do is to list the challenges. What are the things that are going to stop you? Partly for me, that was around the culture. Now, I needed to build a culture of learning cooperatively. So I needed to build a culture where people were able to interact with others, and I couldn't do that necessarily in the classroom. So I had to understand what's the challenge and how can I overcome that. So I just listed all the things that I needed to build and all the things I needed that would come up as challenges for me. Challenges will tend to be physical, in terms of rooms. They'll tend to be attitudinal in terms of people, because people are difficult, aren't we? They'll tend to be lateral. You'll get a lot of lateral challenges. As in, well, nobody else is doing that, so why should we? And you will get hierarchical challenges as well. Somebody elsewhere in the business will not want it done. Then you need to establish the data that matters. Now, in my case, I just wanted to prove that people were learning stuff differently. So the only data that I counted was the number of engagements that I got on the new learning that I built. So I'd taken all my courses and classes away, and I then built a platform where I was able to count the number of people who entered that platform and accessed new learning. In the first 3 months that I built it, I had an organisation of about 2,500, 3,000 people, and I was getting between 600 and 1,000 enrolments new every month. So a third of my organisation was enrolling on something new. I wasn't getting 1,000 course places every month. So I was immediately able to demonstrate some additional value. And what that data then gave me was then able to tell me, well, actually, in terms of content, what stuff worked. So if I built a platform on or built a forum or space on the Moodle platform, people said that doesn't work. Actually, we want to do it on LinkedIn. Great, let me go and build something on LinkedIn. And that's about the engaging and energising and build the spaces for people where they want, not just because I built it, they will then come and use it. When you've established the data, what you then do is make a decision. And your decision is your plan. This is now where you decide what you're going to do and in what order. And it might be that you need to go overcome a challenge first. It might be that your technology is so poor that you can't build it on your platform, and so you're going to have to make a decision, I'm going to have to go outside. It might be I'm going to do something based in the cloud. It might be a thing that you build, but what you do is you build and make a list of all the things you're going to need to do and the sequential order that you need to do it in. That's the plan part. And then finally, you do an environmental check. So when you've done the first part, what will be the effect of what you've done? So if I then take away all my courses and classes, what's the effect and impact of that going to be? If I then build a platform where people can learn from each other, what's the effect and impact of that going to be? If I get rid of case studies and just build comic strips where people can learn, 4 or 5 pictures, where people can learn content, what's the effect of that going to be? If I build links to libraries, I work in a council, we've got libraries. Why do I keep an open library for books and content when people can go to the library themselves? If I build links to library content where people can learn this stuff, what's the effect of that going to be? What's the impact of that? The impact of that one was actually I gave some of my budget to the library service so they could go and buy the content that people wanted to use. That then becomes self-fulfilling because they get more budget, they're able to do more books, I end up sending more people to the learning activities. It's about living inside that triangle. The things that stop it are, the things that will stop you from doing this are other people. Yeah? You need to have authority to do this. You need to have either hierarchical authority or social authority. You need to be in a place where you're able to change it and do things differently. You need to have some resource. You can do it with no resource. I did it with almost no resource. I took my team from 7 down to 2, and I was one of the 2. And I was still able to produce a completely different way of doing things. So you can do it with almost no resource, but understand the resources that you have got. The other things that will stop you will be the skills. Do you have the skills able to make this happen? It's the big issue coming out from the Towards Maturity report and has been within the LPI, Learning Performance Institute, their capability map. Do we, as learning professionals, have the skill to do things differently? And it's not necessarily about the technical skills anymore. It's about the skills to work with the business, in the business, to do what the business needs so that they can perform. Learning development isn't part of, it should be part, isn't separate from, it should be part of the business and within it. The last thing that will stop you is the will. Do you actually want to do something differently? Because if you don't, you might as well leave now. Because the business and the organisation will change around you, learning will change around you. And unless you want to be on the cusp and the edge of that, and you want to stay relevant, learning development won't stay relevant if you maintain the way you have been. I'm happy to discuss all this stuff with anybody online, happy to do it by email, happy to do it through Twitter, happy to do it here, but we won't do it immediately. We'll have some questions afterwards.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I don't know if we've got any sound on this. I have a question for you, because I can break the rules a little bit here. you were talking about understanding something operationally and then going back and establishing a tactic to help you to do that. Can you just give us one short, concrete example of what you did, what you mean by that, just so that we've got a little bit of context for that.
Okay, so one of the things, one of the things I did was, like I said, I looked at case studies, and we looked at case studies around sickness absence for managers, and said, why do managers need a question and answer about this is the situation, how would you do it? So what we did is we built some comic strips. What we did is we built 5-6 frame comic strips that had different images and had a range of questions on them. So this is an operational activity. We decided we're going to get rid of the normal case study. We're just going to do something built around comic strips. It went back into the tactical space because they were just question sheets. There was no answers. What I needed to do was to make sure that my HR teams and my HR managers and my HR advisors would be able to deal with any questions and answers that came from those case studies. So you as a manager want to know how to manage sickness absence. You would go to the where the content was, you would draw down that case study, you would look at it, you would answer the questions, and if you had any other questions on it, you then didn't go back to the learning professional, you didn't go back necessarily to your line manager, you went back to HR, who were the subject matter experts. So the tactical space is about understanding who your subject matter experts are, who are the people who can help with the relationships.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that example. Because I think really when you were talking about the Towards Maturity benchmark work, we've summarised the strategies and tactics of the top performing learning organisations on the infographic in your bag. But really what we've found out is that those organisations that are getting really great results are turning their strategic thinking into tactical thinking. They're doing things differently. And a number of things that you mentioned, people are doing differently. And we, in our analysis, we look at the top deck, those in the top 10% of those action areas, because they're getting the best results consistently across the board.